Welcome to the Week in Italian Startup, where we discuss the latest highlights happening in the Italian tech and investment ecosystem. Our first story brings us today to London, when ShopCircle, a dynamic e-commerce software startup, is making moves. So ShopCircle focuses on providing a comprehensive tech suite to simplify the complex world of e-commerce. They specialize in advanced customization of online stores, recognizing that to scale successfully, on average, e-commerce shop require between 12 and 20 different tools attached to their Shopify platform. They have built so far around 37, and that's interesting because, aside from the successful fundraise, that's a great example on how simplification of product or simplification of actually like activity actually can pay off like really well and build a very interesting business angle. So it's a platform on top of a platform, I would say. It's in between sort of what we discuss often. Is the startup a vitamin or a painkiller? I think they are ShopCircle seem a bit of both. So supporting the painful processes of setting up like a Shopify account and then boosting it like very, very hard. So definitely a great play and a great fundraise. It's winning by simplification, man.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we really loved about the offering, the product. Plus the founders are great, and they're operating in a very thriving ecosystem. So despite e-commerce reverted to the mean after the pandemic passed, Shopify still shows a very thriving ecosystem. Lots of merchants using the platform, and lots of tools operator using the App Store and developing on the App Store of Shopify. So a great starting point for a company such as ShopCircle. And I love the idea of having a one-stop shop for anything but the cart, basically.
Yes,
and,
interesting.
Very interesting. As you say, you're right. It's probably, you need the cart in order to sell something, but the cart is not enough anymore, right? So basically, it's not just one vitamin. It's a great vitamin mix with some aspirin in it as well, and so on and so forth. So it's a very nice offering. The founders have been doing great since they started, and they started 2 years ago, and already raised this Series A round. We knew them back then, but we managed to join the round only this time, and it was a very interesting round. And the funding round is very interesting as well. I don't know whether you made your own research, so you want to chime in and tell more about the round?
So 120 million Series A funding, very interesting. I think the idea is also kind of pushed the kind of it's a huge Series A funding. Let's be it's pretty clear. This is definitely driven by the fact that post-pandemic, apparently the e-commerce business has been growing like a whopping 33% year over year. It's impressive. So everyone post-pandemic is opening an online shop of some sort, or maybe the barrier for opening it are lowering. So definitely ShopCircle is located in a very, very interesting and strategic spot. What is interesting is the pool of investors that participated. So starting from 645 Ventures, US-based firm known for seed and Series A. I think their latest fund is about 347 million. So it's a big guy, definitely a big guy, like a big player in the US. Co-leading the investment, what is interesting is 3VC, which is a way smaller, like Austrian VC. Asset under management, I think, is around 200 million, so much smaller, but very interesting that they participated in this round. Followed by 3 other players, well, more than 3, but let's focus on, I would say, NFX. Of course, NFX, one of the giants in Silicon Valley. They have a track record of 5 funds and around 300 investment. QED, again, US-based specialist fund, kind of focused on fintech, but not only that. So it's kind of a broader than fintech. They have, as of today, about 7 funds with 2.3 billion under management. So another like giant on the investment part. We also have some people from Italy, and that would include a syndicate of Italian investors, CDP Venture Capital, the Techshop, BlackSheep Ventures, and of course you guys. So that's it's a very interesting like combo, and I think, to be honest, like it's a very smart move to actually include like huge investors together with more localized and specialized investor, because it really kind of widened the surface for potential follow-up rounds in different geographies and for different amounts. So very, very well executed, I would say.
Yeah, that's one of the ideas. The series around is huge in terms of numbers because it's a mixture of equity and debt. Since the model that ShopCircle is operating on currently means they acquire software in the Shopify ecosystem, and they integrate and operate the software. So basically, they develop internally some tools, but mostly it's a matter of aggregating, unifying the user experience, putting everything under the same umbrella, and then offering to the merchants a complete experience in terms of e-commerce tools. So that's the idea, and they use some leverage to complete the acquisition. So it makes huge sense. That's why the rounds sounds a bit inflated, and for sure they have plans to grow in terms of geographies and in terms of platforms. So Shopify is not the only ecosystem out there. So going forward, we may see ShopCircle joining other e-commerce ecosystems. As I was saying, and as you said, it's a very international round. So the company is a UK company. It's founded by 2 Italians. You mentioned Primo VC as one of the lead investors from Austria. The B2B generalist, but focus on B2B software fund. And the person who led the round for them is an Italian, actually. So a principal from Italy. Yeah. So there is some Italian mafia here and there, working on this round on both sides. Yes. CDP, Techshop, BlackSheep, and us, we joined forces and we entered into the round as a syndicate, basically. So we worked together. It was quite fun to operate in such a nice syndication round. It's unusual, I mean, for me and from my experience, to have so many funds from Italy working together on the same round, the same time, in the same moment. And it was a great experience. So shout out to the other partners leading the round, because it was fun working on it with them.
So, any specific insight, since you were particularly like involved in the round? Like, was it difficult to actually put everyone together, from the big guys to the smaller guys? How easy that was to be on the same page? Was it like a dynamic where the big investors sort of dictated the terms, and then you guys were more following, or it was kind of a mutual sort of relationship where you could actually provide some input? How smooth that was?
Well, the round has 2 lead investors, and they led the round, led the terms, founders, the Italian syndicate, CDP, and the others were followers, and that's in the purest sense of the term. So we basically agreed on the terms as set by the lead and the founders. Of course, there are some nuances for the followers, but still, it was a traditional round in that sense. And I have to say, among ourselves, it was easy to come to a consensus. It turns out that we have the same goals, and when you have the same goals and the same a very similar approach to deals, it's very easy to collaborate.
Yeah.
It was a good experience.
So finally, like a nice round that can actually bump up the curve that you draw like every week. They're based in London. They're Italian founders. There's debate there. I know that you're precise on this, but let's put a bump on that, I would say.
Yeah. So far, I didn't include them in the curve, just because for consistency, because historically foreign companies that raise from Italian funds, so companies headquartered with a lot of operations abroad, raising funds, even though they have Italian operations. I didn't include them in the count, so I have a strict policy so far. Even though you're right, I probably should add them to the count. That means I need to make almost
mess
public
with your scientific precision and assumption. So Nick,
why it's a moving component. So, I mean, today it's like that, tomorrow who knows. But the point is that I would like to compare apples with apples going forward every year.
100%.
So if I change the policy, I might, make the water less clean.
Yeah,
we'll see.
We need another line, maybe on the graph. We need another line, like Italian founders raising capital, like geography agnostic sort of thing. That's not too
bad. The same as the GDP and GNP, something like that.
Very good.
Gross national product in terms of Italian founders doing things abroad. But then I would have to add like syslog and stuff like that, so numbers could, explode.
Let's talk about Arduino. So Arduino is some exciting news. They've raised an additional 22 million in their Series B round. Leading this round are CDP Venture Capital and Anzu partners. Joining them is a semiconductor leader, ARM. What's your take, Nick, on this? Definitely, interesting. Arduino has been a big player for a long time. Definitely, things are moving for them, and that's definitely great news.
Well, can I say it? Arduino is a revolution. It was a revolution, and it's growing up. Let's say so, because having an open source hardware platform where you can prototype quickly any hardware platform. It changed the world in a sense, right? And the fact that it was started in Italy, basically by an international team out of Italy, out of Ivrea, actually the home of Olivetti. It's a further pretty interesting point. Arduino had a bumpy history. If you go on Wikipedia, you can read about it. There was a split company. The IP was, it's been battled on for a few years. And finally, a few years ago, Fabio Violante was hired as CEO of Arduino with the goal to unify everything and make it a full-blown company. And today we see the results. So Arduino completed Series B round. They raised $54 million altogether from strong players, and it's nowadays an Italian brand known everywhere in the world. So I'm very excited about this round. I'm very happy. I know Fabio very well, so congratulations. He's number one for these things.
Should involve him in the podcast and have like a deep dive on the Arduino.
That is an idea, yes.
All right, so moving on, let's talk about QuantaBrain. I thought it was very interesting because QuantaBrain is a startup that was born actually this year with a mission to diagnose psychiatric and neurodevelopmental disorder using cutting-edge AI algorithms. So it's a cross between anything AI and image recognition and pattern recognition through AI and healthcare. The startup is based in Italy, and they have secured an undisclosed amount from several investors, among which Scientifica Venture Capital. The approach is interesting because they're basically trying to use AI to identify biomarkers in MRI scans. So the idea is to early diagnose autism, for example, and that's one of the first applications they're using, in pre-verbal children in a way that can actually support early intervention and anticipate all the kind of treatment that can be made. So it's definitely also like an interesting deal for several reasons. Very new startup, got some funding, kind of touching some of the biggest challenges and using the biggest technology right now available. So definitely an interesting position for them.
We don't know the amount of the funding. It was undisclosed. It's probably pre-seed-ish round, since the university spin off. Scientifica VC, let's remember that has a scouting agreement with Recordati the pharma company. So they basically, this is, it looks like can become an ecosystem deal where also potentially Recordati is involved. We don't know from the news, but we know from the relationship that something might be, also from the industrial side, might turn out to be interesting for QuantaBrain on the market.
Interesting. All right. One link that you mentioned, I think it was very interesting. It was about Panakes' partner, kind of analysis of what they've been doing, and just like a very, very detailed profile that can be interesting. So we've seen Panakes like moving like every year. Essentially, they're doing like interesting deal. We kind of appreciate like the way they're like leading the way into the sector, especially of course in the healthcare sector. I don't know, maybe they might be one of the best VC investors in Italy. Let me throw that out there. Nick, I don't know what is your thinking. So what I wanted to do is maybe like point out a few elements that, might have contributed to actually be probably one of the most at least active and, well-placed VCs in Italy. So the company is a very interesting story. So starting in 2015, so it's relatively new for a fund, focusing basically like three founders, Alessio Beverina, Diana Saraceni, and Alessio Landi, started with a fundraise, like fund one of 75 million. I think they also try to have a strategy where they not only invested in Italian companies, but also they kept it pretty even with the foreign investments. So that's the first point that I think is worth mentioning. So it's not purely Italian. They're kind of looking worldwide to actually find the best opportunity in their thesis-driven sector. What's your take on this, Nick? Like, 100% Italian, 100% foreign, mix of the two. Is it part of that? Does it contribute to their success? What's the deal here?
I believe the focus, the experience of the partners, the team that they built, so that strong contributors to the numbers that we've seen on the article. So I don't know about being the best VC. They are a great VC because I don't know the returns. And if you measure their operations so far by the capability of the portfolio startups to raise capital going forward, they're probably one of the best in Italy in terms of identifying good horses on which to bet, and that are able to go on the market to raise further capital. So absolutely good. They are a thematic VC, meaning they focus on medtech, they touch upon biotech, so they have a very specific and vertical focus. Italy is strong on life sciences. We know that we've seen it during our episodes. Even though I would say that focusing only on Italy when you are thematic can be dangerous. So I totally agree on being, of knowing that you are an Italian operator out of Italy, so you know your market very well, but you also have thesis going abroad, and you can develop also abroad. So I think it makes sense when you are thematic in that way.
Another, I think, element that contributes to definitely their good performance is the fact that they focus on, I would call it Series A with prototypes. So they're not really focusing on early stage, like early, so like pre-seed or seed. They really want to see something happening with some, at least like prototyping. So that's also like a very, very interesting position to actually manage risk when it comes to early stage investment, especially in those sectors. So not purely research plays, but things that have already been moved and applied. So definitely like some form of applied science, practical applied science with some form of results. I think that's also a very good angle, I would say.
Yeah. Well, they know they only have 10 years before closing the fund. So, and life science method can take a long time to go from the lab to the market and actually to value. So it makes sense. Again, when you are so thematic, so thesis driven, you need to be a bit broader in terms of geographies to go forward.
Yeah.
We should have Alessio Beverina on the podcast and ask him more.
That's a good idea. Another good idea. Awesome. So just to finish the episode, I thought it was interesting to mention the big question that you raised in one of the articles from the head of data science from AngelList. do startup valuation matter for investment returns? So what is the relationship between like early valuation to actually returns that are going to happen like later on in the life of the company? So there are a few studies, there are like a few controversial opinion. Some people argue that valuation should matter for return. So if a seed round is more expensive, then the company needs to achieve a higher valuation at Series A to get a bigger markup. And of course, it's much more difficult to mark up if the valuation, the original valuation, is big. So we see here like competing forces, which actually confuse a little bit this kind of study, I would say. So on one side, we have, startup with higher valuation that, that's kind of a signal that they're better companies in a way, but at the same time, that's a way for them to actually have higher markups later in their life. And that's one of the arguments. We can discuss that. What I want to point out is actually the findings from the data science from AngelList that basically is like leading that the whole basically article leads to three conclusions. That first of all, there is no clear evidence that higher or lower valuation at seed stage lead to better markups and multiples in the long run. That's kind of in a way like distresses all the early stage investor when it comes to actually how exactly that's going to work for the future. The second conclusion that I thought it was interesting was the fact that he makes an interesting point about efficient pricing and given available information. So one of his points was that valuation are kind of fair. They reflect an efficient market there. So the valuation, they tend to sort of arrange in a proper way given the available information. So I thought that was also an interesting point. Finally, and that's probably one of the most shocking takeaways, that if a seed deal is not marked up within 3 years, it is unlikely it will be marked up. So, three big conclusions, up to debate, of course, is still open, but definitely that is something interesting to see and to follow, actually. AngelList has the biggest data available for seed deals. There might be some there, there might be some relevant correlations there to be uncovered, and that's one way to sort of tackle the problem.
Yeah, and remember, it's the American market, so there is some
excellent.
Some local dependency. I was looking at the amount of capital available. So last year, VCs in Europe raised like 23 billion. In the US, it was like 10 times, something like that. So numbers are a bit different. I love the comment of Paul Graham. He went straight to the point. If you're aiming for 1,000 times your investment, the difference between 1x and 2x or 3x the valuation, it doesn't really matter.
Nice. Awesome. So with that, Nick, thank you so much for joining. I think it's a nice way to conclude. And thank you so much for all the listener, and I'll see you next time.